The Vanishing Legion, Rome's greatest military mystery in the mist-shrouded highlands of ancient Britain. 5,000 men marched into legend and never returned. Their eagle standard, the sacred symbol of Rome's military might, disappeared with them. No battlefield has yielded their bones. No chronicle records their final stand. The Ninth Legion Hispana simply ceased to exist, leaving behind one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. How does an entire Roman legion, battle-hardened veterans who conquered kingdoms, vanish without a trace? The Legion of Legends. Before they disappeared, the Ninth Legion was among Rome's most illustrious fighting forces. Their story began not in Britain's foggy moors but in the burning heat of Spain, where they earned their title Hispana during the brutal campaigns against Iberian tribes. By the time of Augustus, they had become the empire's troubleshooters, deployed wherever Rome's grip needed tightening. They fought beside Julius Caesar himself in the Gallic Wars, their gladi dripping with the blood of barbarian chieftains. They stood firm during the civil wars that tore the Republic apart, choosing sides that would determine the fate of Western civilization. But it was in Britain where their legacy would transform from triumph to enigma. When Emperor Claudius launched his invasion in 43 AD, the Ninth was there, splashing through the cold waters of the Thames, planting Rome's eagles in soil that had never felt an emperor's authority. They pushed north, subjugating tribe after tribe, building the roads and fortresses that would mark the frontier of civilization itself. For decades, they were Britain's iron fist, stationed at Eboracum, modern-day York, the beating heart of Roman power in the north. The Queen's revenge then came Boudica. In 60 AD, the Ninth Legion received the most devastating blow in its history, one that some historians believe planted the seeds of its eventual destruction. When the Iceni queen rose in rebellion, her forces caught a detachment of the Ninth in open country. What followed was slaughter. Roman discipline shattered against the fury of British warriors who had seen their lands stolen, their queen flogged, her daughters violated. The legion's infantry was nearly annihilated. Only the cavalry commander and his mounted troops escaped, fleeing back to their fortress with news of the catastrophe. The Ninth recovered, reinforced by fresh troops from across the empire, but the psychological wound never healed. They had tasted defeat against the very people they were meant to dominate. In a military culture where honor meant everything, where legions carried their battle standards for centuries as proof of unbroken glory, this humiliation festered. Could this shame have driven them to take risks decades later, desperate to prove themselves once more against Britain's northern tribes? Into the Caledonian Dark by the early 2nd century, the Ninth Legion found itself stationed at the empire's bleeding edge. Beyond Iberacum lay Caledonia, modern Scotland, a land of painted warriors, impenetrable forests, and tribal confederations that had never bent the knee to Rome. These weren't the disorganized bands of southern Britain. The Caledonian tribes had watched Rome's methods for decades, learned from defeats, adapted their tactics. They knew how to use terrain, how to strike supply lines, how to vanish into landscape that swallowed Roman columns whole. Emperor Trajan's reign demanded expansion. Britain's governors felt pressure to push the frontier north, to finish what Agricola had started decades earlier when he defeated the Caledonians at Mons Gropius. The Ninth Legion, with something to prove, would have been the natural choice for such a campaign. Did they march north one final time, their standards gleaming in rare British sunshine, expecting to add another victory to their illustrious record? Here's where the trail goes cold, maddeningly, mysteriously cold. The silence of the stones after approximately 120 AD. The Ninth Legion disappears from Roman records, not gradually. Not with explanatory notes about disbandment or redeployment. They simply stop existing in the documentary evidence that usually tracks legions with bureaucratic precision. No more building inscriptions bearing their name. No more discharge certificates for veterans. No more requisition orders for supplies. For an administrative machine as thorough as Rome's military system, this silence screams louder than any battle report. Archaeological excavations at York have revealed something equally chilling. Evidence of emergency repairs to the fortress walls, structures rebuilt in haste, signs of potential assault. Were these defenses raised against a threat that succeeded? Did something terrible happen at the Ninth's home base while they were deployed elsewhere? Or did survivors return to find their fortress vulnerable after a catastrophic loss in the field? The most romantic theory imagines the Legion marching into Caledonia, penetrating beyond the Antonine Wall's future location, pursuing raiders or attempting to establish a new northern frontier. In the pine forests and narrow glens, ambush would be child's play for warriors who knew every stream and hillside. The legionaries trained for set-piece battles on open ground would find their formations useless. Their shields and armor, designed for Mediterranean warfare, would become exhausting burdens in the cold, broken terrain. Like Varus's legions in the Teutoburg forest a century earlier, they could have been systematically destroyed over days of running battles, their units separated, their commanders killed, their ego captured as the ultimate trophy. The alternative narratives, but history rarely offers such satisfying simplicity. Other evidence suggests the Ninth might have survived Britain entirely, only to die elsewhere, forgotten in some other corner of Rome's vast empire. A tile stamp bearing their name has been found at Nijmegen in the Netherlands, dated to the 120s. Did the Legion receive transfer orders marching away from Britain to meet threats on the Rhine or Danube frontiers? Roman legions were sometimes disbanded after severe defeats. Their survivors scattered among other units, their number retired in disgrace. This administrative death would explain the sudden silence while avoiding the need for a dramatic last stand. Perhaps even more intriguing, some historians point to the Parthian Wars of the 160s. Emperor Marcus Aurelius needed every available soldier for campaigns in the east. Could the Ninth have been sent to Mesopotamia, only to be destroyed in the deserts of the Fertile Crescent? So far from their British posting that their loss seemed unconnected to their former identity. The eagle of the Ninth, if it survived, might lie buried not in Scottish peat but in Iranian sand. Why we'll never stop looking? The mystery of the Ninth Legion endures because it touches something fundamental in the human psyche, our fear of being forgotten, of disappearing without witness or memory. 5,000 men, each with names, families, stories, ambitions all erased from history so completely that we can't even agree on how they died. Were they buried in mass graves that await discovery? Did their bones scatter across mountains where no archaeologist will ever excavate? Or did they survive, living out their days in distant provinces, never realizing that history would record them as vanished? Modern archaeology continues the search. Ground-penetrating radar scans Scottish battlefields. Archives in Rome yield new fragments of military documents. Each discovery reshapes the puzzle, but the central mystery remains intact. In 2010, a film crew-funded excavation claimed to have found evidence of a major battle in Scotland dated to the right period, but the evidence remains circumstantial, hotly debated, tantalizing but inconclusive. The Ghost Legion's legacy, what makes the Ninth Legion? As disappearance truly viral isn't just the mystery, what it reveals about empire itself. Rome, the civilization that documented everything, that carved its achievements in stone meant to last millennia, couldn't protect one of its premier legions from historical oblivion. If Rome, with all its power and administrative genius, could lose track of 5,000 soldiers, what does that say about the fragility of memory? How many other legions, tribes, and peoples have vanished from history because their story was never written down or their records were lost to time? The Ninth Legion reminds us that history has holes, vast, dark spaces where certainty cannot penetrate. In our age of surveillance and documentation, when every moment seems recorded forever, the idea that thousands of professional soldiers could simply cease to exist feels almost supernatural. Yet it happened, or something like it happened, in ways we may never fully understand. Somewhere beneath British soil or foreign sands, the eagle of the Ninth Legion might still wait in darkness, clutching in bronze talons the final answer to Rome's greatest military mystery. Until that day, if it ever comes, we can only imagine the final moments of these vanished soldiers, fighting in some forgotten place, dying without knowing that their very disappearance would make them immortal.